Hey, what's going on? We're
guys.
here, and it's Mother's Day, 2019.
Dude, we shouldn't have said that.
Yeah. Well,
No, we
I
won't.
have an excuse. My mother doesn't live in the state, but
I
Tom, on the
don't.
other hand. So we're going to talk about beautiful things, and we're going to praise God. God's the Almighty King.
I can't believe you disrespect me like that.
So, well, why don't you go ahead and lead us into something because we got stuff to talk about.
So yesterday we were on the Frisbee golf course here. We're at Blendon Woods right now, recording live, and we were talking about goals
Yeah.
and how you can have a big goal, and let's just say that you envision yourself being the CEO of a company that you start and making a lot of money, and then having a nice home, and et cetera, et cetera. And you vision that. That's your goal. You're right out of college or maybe before college, and you're setting this down, and you have an idea of what that looks like. So you say, okay, I'm going to go to college, and once I get out of college, then I'm going to get a job at one of these firms or one of these in this industry. I'm going to work my way up, and then I'm going to learn everything about it, and then I'm going to branch off, and then I'm going to take out a loan, and I'm going to start a business. I'm going to get investors, etc. Like, you've got it all mapped out. And so we were talking about how when that plan doesn't come to fruition as you had hoped it to, that it's easy to view your goals as a failure. But the real idea is to have the big goal out there and not necessarily have the blueprint on how you're going to get there so ingrained in stone that if something comes and it's different, that you can't get off that path and take that and accept it as a stepping stone towards your direction.
That's right. Okay, so that jogs my memory because that's right. We were talking about how if you have a goal and then you have how you're going to get there precisely mapped out, way too rigid,
Yeah.
that's setting yourself up for failure because you don't know exactly how you're going to arrive to a goal.
Yeah.
So, like today we're playing disc golf. You got a 30-foot putt. You aim the disc towards the basket, and you can't specifically say exactly to the tee how that disc is going to fly through the air. You have a generalized flight pattern, and then you sync it.
Yeah.
And so that's exactly how we need to conduct ourselves.
And that analogy, which is on the fly and relevant because we're here,
No pun intended.
is like if you intend to make a like when you tee off on a par 3, you intend to sink it in the hole. Like, you want to get a hole in one.
Right.
But from that far out, you're really just trying to get it on the close to the pad. But your goal is to get it on the hole in one. And so if you hit a tree and it bounces off and it goes in the basket, that's a hole in one.
That's luck.
Yeah. But
Chance.
the point is, if you get a hole in one and it bounced off the tree and you're disappointed because it didn't go in the way you wanted it to, is the analogy of like, okay, well, when we're going down our path for the goal and a tree gets in our way, instead of sitting there and looking at it like, if you slow down the golfing to scene by scene and you hit the tree, the moment you hit it, you're like, oh, there's no way it's going in now.
Yeah.
Oh man, I'm way off my path, and then it ends up making its way to where you want. And so, the idea is to be open to different paths, avenues.
Overcoming obstacles. When something happens that wasn't planned, you equate it to life, right? The disc golf equated to life. Something happens, doesn't go to plan, and you could say to yourself, all right, this is it, I'm done, I'm packing it up and going home, or I'm not going to try anymore. But when you already have, because when we start off a disc golf game, we know that we're going to finish it. We're just going to get through it. And so it doesn't matter what happens along the way. You know that you're going to hit hole 18, you're going to shoot the last hole, and game over.
Yeah.
But in life, it's like, oh man, something goes wrong. you give up, don't even try anymore, and then you recoil and you sit on hole 3 for the rest of your life. And so, like, what's hole 3 equivalent to in the game of life? It's like redundant routines that do nothing for you, finding complacency. Imagine that you pitch 10 on hole 3. You sit there and you call it home now. Like, that's where you're gonna stay, and I mean that like on on a mental level. So, what else?
I mean, what else we were talking about some really deep stuff as far as, being so focused on where you want to go that you.
Well, let's talk about identity. Identifying with goals.
Yeah.
It's like, look, set for yourself goals, just complete them, because you start to elevate your goals to a higher pedestal. Are you gonna?
No, I'm checking this out.
Does it look broken to you?
No.
Yeah. Don't identify with your goal. And I think that is on a neurological, psychological working, how that all operates. If you set something up too high and then it becomes your God, it becomes your identity. You start to identify as somebody striving for this particular thing, and you make it so big in your life. Like, it's going to be such a huge deal that you start to, over the course of time, you wrap up your identity in it. And that's not good.
Yeah.
Because you're not, at least the way I think, you're not supposed to wrap up your identity in it in such a way that
it affects you in a negative.
that you don't wrap up your identity in it so much so that over the course of time you start to identify as somebody striving for such and such a thing. Let's talk about finances. Like, this is why striving for finances, for money, specifically money, is an awful thing to do, because think about it, money's finite. Money's infinite. You can have more and more and more and more and more. So if you set yourself up as somebody who is lacking and going for finances, you'll never get there, because what is striving for finances? Like, where's the end goal? Yeah. It's like, hey man, if I make $100,000 a month, like, then whatever, like, I've hit my goal, which is actually good because you have a goal. But when that becomes your identity, when you're wrapped up in it, then your identity becomes wrapped up in this one linear thing, and that's unimaginative. So that's my take on that.
And we talked about this idea of, like, for me, for example, I want to run against the grand remodeling so that it's independent of me, so that, it's operating without me being there on the day-to-day. And then in 5 years, once it gets big enough, I want to have the flow, the cash flow, to be able to transition into home building. So I want to build custom homes one day. And now that Against the Grain is starting to, operate successfully on a very small scale, very, very small scale. Prematurely of when I would start home building, I get offered a job, supervising for a company that builds homes. So it's like, okay, well, my end goal is to build homes and have Against the Grain remodeling. So, but I don't know what it looks like in the meantime to get there. And so it looks like it'd be premature for me to start working for a company and build homes, and then keep Against the Grain remodeling going. So, like, before I even got the job offer, before I even knew it existed, I was like, I'm putting all my eggs in this basket of getting Against the Grain remodeling up and healthy and running independently. And then I'm on that path, and I've got plans on how I can do that. And then out of nowhere comes the tree, comes like this offer. And you sit there and you're like, well, crap. what should I do? Is this offer going to take me away from my path or keep me on and bring me closer to my path? And there's no way to tell from looking from right here because you're so ahead of it, and you have no idea where it's going to go, where you're going to be 5 years.
What's your thought on that then? You have this goal and there's a tree, and if you accept the job, that's like hitting the tree. Now, how do you see it? Like, I think it all depends on your perspective. Do you want it to be a bounce? Do you want it to be the disc bouncing off the tree going in the hole?
Yeah.
So, hey, this job is going to take me to remodeling, or is it like, crap, if I take the job, it's going to take me way off, and I'll end up doing something that I really don't want to be doing in like 3 years, and it'll be sucky. So, what is your perspective on it? Like you right now?
Well, my perspective is that it's all going to work out, and that was the point. Is that how we look at the end goal in getting there is going to help or detract us from getting there. Because if we're like, I think this is going to be a stepping stone of, getting where I want to be. I think this is exactly what I was asking for, just sooner than I wanted it or hadn't expected it to come. Right. And I think it's going to be a very positive thing. So I'm going to go down that road. But if I had the mindset of, and this is what we're talking about, the people that have the mindset of the goal, like I know where the goal is, and here's step A, here's step B, here's step C. This job offer is not in this plan, so I'm not going to take it. And then you come out and find out that job offer was a great, part of the path, but you were so caught up on what you thought the path looked like, what you thought your future success looked like, and how you were going to get there. And then, like what we talked about on the course the other day was how the biggest thing I think that this conversation should revolve around is how we put too much emphasis and trust in what we see.
Yes, the material
world.
Yeah.
And we don't have any faith or any awareness of what is immaterial, what's invisible. Yeah. We have no idea what's working for us or against us invisibly, and so we don't account for that. We don't factor that into this equation. And like, when you're talking about, okay, I have a goal and I want to be successful in this area, we don't factor in the miracle, if you will, or whatever you want to say, coincidence, chance of getting a job offer that you had no idea was even, available, offered to you, and then to take you down that path quicker.
Yeah, if you got your identity, if you got your faith wrapped up in the material world, then you're pretty much screwed, because that's your only feedback mechanism is what is currently happening in the material, and that's where you put your faith and identity in, and it just makes for a crappy life because everything's a roller coaster. Things are great, finances are up, finances are down, opportunities are up, opportunities are down, bad things happen, good things happen.
Yeah.
So what do you got your faith wrapped up in? Let me ask you a question. An entrepreneur who has 7 endeavors going at once, 7 businesses, 7 enterprises, whatever it is, what's their identity wrapped up in? They just want to make things work. Like, let me put my hand on this, make it a success, go to the next thing. If they're so quick to start something, take it to the point where it can operate on its own, maybe hire like a crew or employees of 100 or 1,000 or whatever it is, or even 5, and then they move on. What's their identity wrapped in? And what do you think? What would you say?
Well, I think it varies for every individual.
Sure. What would you say generally?
I think
if their identity is wrapped up in no specific thing.
Success.
So the entrepreneur has to say. The entrepreneur has to say, hey, what's successful to me? They have to identify that, and that's. But then again, you're wrapping up into an identity. Like, hey, success is my identity. I don't care what the business is. I can get into the food industry. I can get into
transportation,
whatever. And then, but once these things are done, what's my identity wrapped in? And so if it's success, then that's an identity.
Yeah. And one thing I was going to say is when you base when you look at your future based on what you can see, what's around you, it can be depressing, because like if you have a more or less immediate need, like a more so immediate need that you can't meet, and you don't know how you're going to meet it, or you don't have the resources to meet that need, and you don't see the resources to meet that need. So, for example, let's just say somebody needs a certain amount of money to start a business or to get them from A to B. They don't have the credit to do it, so they can't borrow it, and they don't have anybody in their immediate circle that can help them obtain those finances. So they look around at their natural means of resources, and there's a brick wall. And so, think about how that affects you negatively, not just because you don't have the resources, which sucks, but then you think you can't get them, which then makes you emotionally and spiritually and physically negative, and then it just compounds the issue, and you give up.
Yeah.
Or
that's mental death.
Yeah.
So you're using the world, you're using your immediate material evidence as your feedback mechanism. You identify with it, and then you apply emotion to it. And we know that emotions is one of the most powerful energy fields, or most powerful sources of energy. And I was going to say something good.
I bet you were.
So okay, so here's what's cool. Say you're in that circumstance. You have two options. Hey man, it's just I don't have this. Okay, so here's what I'll say. Let me say before I forget it. So people who are in that state look at wealthy people. They look at famous people, and they glorify them. And they say, man, look at the image that they're projecting towards me. They got it, man. They're successful. They're famous. They got money. They're always happy. And so in your mind, you build that hierarchy. You're just like, or you place yourself in that hierarchy. You're saying, man, here I am, and here's where these people are. And it's all depicted to you through media, through interviews. And you're like, man, they're so happy and outgoing. Like, I'm never going to be like that. So let me just live my life at this low level. And so, number one, first off, you don't know what anybody's going through, man.
Yeah.
Pictures are so awesome. You can look. This is the dilemma that's happening to the world right now. It's like everybody is posting their perfect life in social media. They're capturing the best moments, and you're saying, "Man, look at them!" And then it just creates so much headache it just ruins the spirit, ruins your mind on a mental, psychological basis, and it's awful. And so, look, you can look into some people's life and say, oh, hey, that person depicted a life of just awesomeness, and they turn out to be an alcoholic. They're drunks. You don't know them on a personal level. And so that's the cool thing. It's if you're in that state of mind where everything around you, or if you're living the reality where everything around you seems to be so like low, your network, your bank accounts, what you do, and all that crap, then you have no other option than to either go and network with people who can elevate you, which they say we were talking about the other day, your network is your net worth and all that, and which is all fine and dandy. That's like law of attraction stuff, osmosis. That's simple stuff. But it's like, look, as an individual, if that's surrounding you, and then you have the choice to say, you know what, I'm going to pull, and we talk about this many times, I'm not going to pull from the material world. I got to pull from the non-material source. But that's a choice. And then we start talking about, okay, well, level of belief and awareness. You got to be aware of it, and you have to believe. And I feel like that's kind of like where our topics all lead to eventually, because once you finally realize that the material world, you can't depend on it, or you shouldn't look towards it. Look, even if you are successful, then you can't just focus on what's happening immediately, I mean, you can stay there because if you're successful and all the things are going great, then you're going to stay in that because of the law of attraction and all that. But you have to focus on something bigger. And some people say, like, well, that's why you have to have a purpose, like in the 7 habits of highly effective people. Like Stephen Covey's saying, these people they have a purpose that they really believe in, because no matter what happens, you're following this thing. But then you got to say, well, what's the purpose? And why did you acquire that? Why did you choose that purpose? What path did you take for that to have meaning towards you? Mm-hmm. And if you don't have a purpose, if you're like, well, God, I got to go find a purpose, then I think that's kind of like, are you going to choose a purpose because you're telling yourself that you need to have a purpose?
Yeah.
So that's interesting.
Well, it's interesting. Just the way you said it made me think about a couple verses in the Bible. And to take it like in a non-spiritual form is, if you think about anything in life that you're building, whether you're talking about it metaphorically, physically, or however else you could talk about it, you want the most solid foundation that you can have on that. Because if you don't have a solid foundation, once it starts crumbling and once it starts cracking your identity and who you are and why you're doing what you're doing, it's going to crumble. And then you're going to get to the bottom of it all and you're going to be like, who am I and why am I doing what I'm doing? Yeah. But if you can start with a solid foundation, okay, well, God, I believe in God, and okay, so where does that leave me? Okay, well, here, and then this is what I'm good at, and here's my passion, and this is why I'm doing it all, and it all goes back to this solid foundation. Then you're going to be sturdy, and not raveled when bad things happen. You know what I mean? Not shaken. And there's this passage in the Bible that just talks about how, a wise man who hears the word of God is like, and applies them, is the one that builds his house on a rock, on a solid foundation. And the foolish man is the one that builds his house in the sand, and the storm comes and washes away the sand, and the house crumbles, and the storm comes and hits against the bricks and stuff and doesn't do it. Yeah. Doesn't break it down. Yeah. And so knowing, why you're passionate or what your purpose is, and having it be authentic on a solid foundation is only going to help you, so that when the difficulties come and you hear the no's and then the rejection, right, you persevere. Yeah. You push through it, yeah, because you know why. You know that your foundation is stronger than what's pushing your opposition.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm thinking about, that reminds me of the story of Job, who had everything. The story of Job in the Bible had everything. He had the family, the wife, the land, the sheep, the ox, the crops, and all that. And then it was all stripped away from him. And then on top of that, he developed a horrible disease. And the whole time, he's like, I can focus on the immaterial or the non-material. I can focus on it, and then my life will become that more and more and more. What's that? The what do they call that? What's that called? The something mentality. When things are, you think things are always against you. Like, what's that mentality called? Yeah, the victim mentality. It's like the victim mentality, like, And then you see in people with, like, health, it's like, man, I'm so sick. I'm talking about my sickness all the time. I'm sick. I'm taking pills. So I got to take 9 pills now. And this is sick. Hey, Bonnie, I went to the doctor today, but now I got to cut my leg off. It's not terrible. Oh, that sucks. And Bonnie loves it because misery loves company. So they're both feeding off each other. And it's just going down some hellish plane. It doesn't, dude. And then the lady dies, horrible sick, and somebody else sees it and who doesn't have the awareness and says, how did that happen? Like, why did that happen? Oh, God's against that person. It's like, man, dude, she just wasn't operating on one of the key laws of the universe that God put into place, and he's not trying to do it with malicious intent. It's just, hey, man, this is how it's got to work. Mm-hmm. God's not dumb. Like, it all makes sense because you have to incorporate free will into it all. But the sad thing is that lack of awareness, man. If your life is constantly bombarded with crap and things are hitting you left and right, especially now we live in such a loud and hurried world, and everything's like, we're constantly being distracted. I just listened to a talk, London Real, I forget who the name of the guy was, he's like some guru or something. He was on there and he was like, we are an extremely we are more distracted than ever before in the history of all time. Just constant distraction, because in order to make things happen, you have to be able to focus on something for an extended period of time. And with all these distractions, we're kind of like, they say a goldfish only has 3 seconds of memory, which is not true, but it's a thing to think about. It's like, hey, I'm thinking about something, but I got to go do this. Hey, my phone's going off now. Oh, hey, I got to go do this. I got 30 things on my list, and those are like those momentary neurological impulses that make us feel good when something new comes along. Hey, I got to go do this. I got to do this. I'm running around. But so, gosh, it's like, it's kind of gets redundant to talk about anymore, because then you have to eventually enter into the non-material world. Like, that's where we need to start playing around in ideas, visions.
Were you finished with Job?
Yeah, it's all done.
Okay.
Hey, real quick, let's cut, because his battery's flashing. We gotta get another battery, so I'm gonna cut real quick. So I'm just gonna cut audio. Okay. Yeah, I'm done with Job. We're talking about the non-material and why your life and our lives can really suck when we focus on this stuff right here.
Nice.
Well, what do you have to add to all that rambling?
Hi. I think. Well, here's a question that I have, and I don't know that there's a definite answer, but okay. So, what's the solution? How do we factor in the immaterial?
The non-material.
Yeah.
Into our lives.
Yeah.
Well, look, Bruce Lipton says, why then, if we're spirits internally and we connect with the spirit world, which is all non-material, why is there a material world? Well, he says this: it's so that we can experience things of the material world, like taste and feelings and touching and the five sensory, all the five senses, and look, it's a beautiful thing. Think about it. Imagine if God was like, look, I'm going to create the universe, but it's all going to be non-material. You're going to be floating as spirits that you can't touch. It's just your consciousness, your consciousness alone. And then imagine that life. So your consciousness, you're like, oh, this is cool. I could do whatever. But then you might be like, but what if we could turn it into material? What if we can actually make material this beauty that we constantly have around us? Let's do it. And then you can be like, well, that's evolution. Fine. Let's not get into that. Let's just all agree that we're in a material world that is underneath the non-material. I don't think it's hand in hand. I think they have the non-material first. That's where we need to be. That's where we need to have our faith, our identity all locked in. And then the material world is just secondary. It's like, hey, this is cool, man. Something goes wrong, something doesn't work out, no big deal, because I don't rely on the evidence of the material. It's all non-material where I have my faith in. I mean, man, that's a huge part of Christ's ministry. Seek ye first the kingdom of heaven. What else is there, man? All the references to that world. Do not store up yourself treasures on earth, where moth and rust destroys, thieves break in and steal. Rather store up for yourself treasures in heaven. Like, dude, that's heaven. So anybody should never be down, should never get down. Not to say that it won't happen, but to never dwell in that space. Something goes wrong, you break your arm. Oh, that hurts, that kind of sucks, but what are you going to do? Identify with yourself with a broken arm for the rest of your lives now? How do amputees continue living? They can be like, dude, this sucks, like my life is over. But instead it's like, no big deal, man, because I'm still connected to the source. Yeah. So, what was your question?
Well, my question was how to factor in the non-material in your circumstances, like you have that scenario where somebody wants something, they believe it's their path and it's good for them, for success, for providing. They just don't have the means to get there.
Okay, well, check this out. What do you think God means in Psalms 23? The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. Like, look, I think this. Ask yourself this question. Why do you want what you want? Not the immediate answer is like, whoa, because I want to have a great life. But like, let's think about it really deep. Why does anybody want what they want? Why does like that guy driving by wants to get a better car? Like, why does he want to go disc golfing now? Like, why did we want to go disc golfing? Like, really ask the question, why did we want to do that? And I really believe, man, it's just how you set up your reward neurons. I think that's all it is. Because we go out, we throw a disc around, we hit a hole, we have a competition, it's fun, our neurons are getting stimulated. But why do we desire that? And is it bad to desire it, or is it bad to desire it so much and enjoy it so much that it starts to become something that you repeatedly do and seek? Because then you become nothing but like a hedonist person, where you're constantly pleasure seeking, where you're constantly relying on the material world to stimulate your neurons so that you could have this pleasurable life. And people say, like Joel today at church, he was like, don't seek happiness, don't seek it, because that's not the point. And I totally agree with that. I think happiness is a byproduct of a lot of things that you are. So look, man, if nothing, it's like stoicism, if nothing worldly should affect you, then what should I constantly be identifying with, or just be? I don't think we need to intellectually or mentally say, this is what I identify with, this is what I identify with. I think you identify, the best way to identify is through emotion. It's like, you don't have to be like, I have everything that I identify with written down on a paper, this is all my identity. It's like, no, I think identify with the one spirit. Just don't identify it though. Just be it. Just be it. Be the light. That's Christ's ministry, right? Be the light.
Yeah.
But how do you know what to be if you aren't aware of it? I think we get that awareness through Christ, at least in our circumstance, or my circumstance. I won't speak for you, but people get their identity in other things, their feelings and emotions. Man, who cares what you say? Bruce Lipton says also that language was created it really just hurts us, language. Rather, it's feelings. Like, what am I feeling constantly? If I don't talk for a week, what are my minute to minute, day to day emotions? What are they? Yeah.
And okay, so with that, I mean, that's all good. Everything you said is fine, but
Let's go. See ya.
But how, like, let's give a practical, if there is one, like a practical example of how do you factor in the non-material resources of Christ, of the world, of the universe when you're thinking about how to get from A to B.
Yeah. So.
How do you factor that in as far as the unknown?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think it's. Well, let's try to list them off. I think it's, first off, awareness. You have to be aware of it, because otherwise, how do you know where to shift that focus? How do you know how to be that? We actually do it by not necessarily being aware of it and not identifying it. It's when we're feeling joyful. Like if you're sitting around your family and you're like, hey man, this brings me a lot of joy to be around my kids. And
I never said that.
So you're not sitting there saying, this is what I identify with. You're just feeling it. And you're like, hey, I want to do that again because that feels good. Hey, let's go play disc golf again because it felt good. So we do it without even necessarily saying, hey, or acknowledging it. We just do it. We just feel it. That's why feelings are so important. We just feel. So, okay, faith, awareness, faith.
Yeah.
Because why would you put any effort into something that you don't believe in? Mm-hmm. And so, if I'm going to speak from my personal experience, I had to start to become aware of a much larger world and universe. And you can literally do it and you can jump on the internet and look at photos of like the universe, or for example, or look into a telescope and see the grandness of the world. That to me is material evidence that there is something huge going on, way bigger. And so look, man, if we can choose what we think about and choose what we identify with and choose what we believe, then those are the steps. And if the material world, if anybody focuses on the material evidence to that and allows for it to dictate how they're going to feel, well, then you are a person who has faith in the material world. So does that answer any questions?
I think it helps. I think it helps. I don't, I think the biggest thing is to have faith. Like you said, first of all, be aware that there is an invisible realm of resources around us, whatever you want to call it, realm, or there's an invisible abundance of resources that can be manifest, and that we can have faith that those are available to us, So when we come up to a brick road or a brick wall, a dead end, and we don't see any other way around us naturally, that we don't have to give up hope, and turn around and, be depressed because we can't get through. What history has shown us is that people that hit those brick walls make it through all the time. They just bust through them because they tap into resources that they didn't know were available through the impossible, or what they thought was impossible, And I think a lot of that, what we talked about too, is a lot of that is through networking, like not networking for the sake of networking, but man, you don't know, like when you get on that path of good vibrations and attracting things, you naturally attract the people. Like that's one of the things we said is you naturally attract the people that you need to be in place for you to move ahead, and it's like me with my company, like I need certain employees in certain positions in order for me to grow. And when I started really manifesting this, like ever since the beginning of this year, and I really started putting pen to pad and really meditating on this and having good emotions about it and feeling good about it and believing and having faith, it's all starting to happen. I'm meeting people that are working for me that I never knew before. They came out of nowhere. I mean, literally, I could tell you stories, of how I've met these people or how I've been put in place with opportunities to do jobs or have people work for me that if I looked at if my natural resources prior to that happening, I would have been like, no, I can't do it. Yeah. I mean, there are points in time where, you go through your phone book as an owner of a company, you go through your phone book and you contact everybody that is in a position of a network, like for example, I know youth ministers and I know pastors, so they're in network of their congregation or of their youth ministry, and so I can text them and say, hey, do you know anybody that is looking for work? And once you get past that and everybody says no, what do? You give up. You go to Home Depot and you just start, or you go to the grocery store and start asking like, hey, you just give up. You shut down. But when you believe, you have faith, well, no, this is what I'm going to do. It's going to happen. So let me push forward. Then, and your emotions are there and your attraction there, then it comes and finds you. And that's how it worked for me. I mean, literally one of my greatest, manifestations that has happened to me, the person found me, Yeah. And it was not even for work. It was for something else. Yeah. But I mean, that's all. Really, that's all I got on that subject.
Yeah, I mean, I believe that.
I say that's all.
It's definitely evident that if you're on a wavelength and you meet people on the same wavelength, you're going to connect. Like that's just the law. And if you're like, oh, I have this business and I need this product, and then you meet somebody and they happen to have that product, it's like, well, you're going to make that connection.
Yeah.
And then you say, hey, look, we just connected. It's not a mystery. It's pretty basic.
But yeah, I mean, if you didn't know, it is a mystery. If you didn't I used to think, oh my God, what a coincidence! Now it's starting to happen, and I'm like, oh, yeah. Well, I've been, you know what I mean?
Yeah. See, the thing is, looking at things as just a coincidence. Well, the way I see it is, nothing's a coincidence. The way you look at it, it's like, hey, it's a coincidence that I happen to be here and you were here, and that's just all timing. Coincidence, like you can be like totally focused on like coincidences, and I prefer to look at it as synchronicity.
Yeah,
it's just synchronized things hey man, I got in my car, I went to this place, you got in your car, you went to this place, we met. That's just synchronicity. And so you got to speak up. You can't sit in a corner and be quiet because no one's going to approach you and be like, hey, do you have this product?
Yeah.
You just got to speak up.
Yeah.
Like whatever you're doing, talk about it. Let it get out there in the airwaves because we are 5 sensory beings. We need to hear things. We're not going to telepathically be like, oh, hey, I know what you need, man. So just talk about it, right? Look, dude, I love the law of Goya. Just get out there and start doing stuff. You know, when somebody's like doing something and you can see that they need help, but they're doing something, they're focused on it. It's like you have a natural, this like tendency to go and just help them.
Yeah.
You know, because you're like, hey, they're in need, and they're not sitting there crying or like, hey, somebody help me. Yes.
If they're passionate about it, you want to go over there.
Yes.
And help them.
And determined. If you see somebody just like, hey, I'm gonna get this, you're like, dude, I'm gonna help you. Like,
yeah.
I'm gonna like. There's a thing I forget who said it, but it said, man, America will meet you halfway. America will meet you halfway. You just have to start doing something. Have you ever seen the honey badger video? It's pretty bad because it's so like grotesque or pretty like vulgar. But there's this National Geographic came out with this. You know how they have nature videos and all that, and there's this one on the honey badger, which a honey badger is like this really cool looking little creature, and dude, it's so productive. It's like, I don't need to rely on anybody to help me. Like, I'm going to get it. There's a beehive on that tree. I'm climbing. I'm going to jam my hands in there and eat the honey. And there's a snake. I'm going to fight it until I get it and eat it. And it's so fun to watch it because it's so like relentless at getting its goal. And it's so like forward going that other animals kind of just like, when they see honey badger, they'll hang out next to it because they know it's going to chase a mouse out and they're going to like grab it. But the honey badger doesn't care. Hey man, you benefited off my work. Fine, I'm going. Like, I'm not going to sit there and sulk and be like, oh man, all my efforts are wasted. It's like, I'm still going. And I love looking at the honey badger as like a worldly creature as kind of like inspiration because it doesn't care, man. If something took advantage of it, doesn't matter, man. I'm still going. And so I think that's a really good way to live because if you're going and you're doing, people are so motivated when they see people doing stuff and getting motivated and to not sit around and wait for outside motivation or for somebody to come and lift you off your butt. Like, hey man, go get it. It's like, man, I need more motivation. I need somebody to, I need handouts, man. I need the government to help me. You know, it's like, where's everybody at? It's like, dude, just go. And you see it and you'll be naturally inclined to help. So I believe in that law 100%, man. If you walked into a field and there was 100 people just sitting around crying and sitting there crying about life and whatever, it's like, which one's going to be the one who's eventually going to be like, you know what? I'm tired of this crap. I'm going to start chopping wood down and build my own fort. I'm going to start building my own house. I'm going to start chopping this grass down and plant something and make room. And if you guys want to help, fine. The more the merrier. If not, sorry that, sulk. But anyway, but the thing is, what gives us the motivation? I have somebody close to me not in my family anymore, but in my proximity through family that they gave up and they're just like done. They're done. It's like, man, and they even predicted that they won't be around for much longer because they already know that they're going to drive their lives into such a horrible place that it's going to end not good. But that's like, what are you crying about, man? Like, what's your identity wrapped in? Who's your God? If somebody spends their entire life being a victim, then you're screwed, man.
Yeah, victimization is...
It's horrible. It's a disease, man. It's a disease. And the thing is, though, it's like, okay, well, fine. But what's the solution then? What do I reach? What can I look up to? And if you're a victim and you've had a horrible life and everything around you is horrible, your influence is horrible, your network, you have nothing, there's no resource, what can you look to? Well, yeah. But seriously, you gotta start looking. You can't focus on the material anymore. You can't. And that's the beauty about life, is that exists, that realm, that option is there. It's real. It might be smothered underneath the loudness of the world right now, especially now with the craziness of it all, but it's there, dude, and it exists, and it's huge, and it trumps everything. It's the master. Everything that's within it, everything that exists is encapsulated within that. So, but man, that's faith. That's when you got to build awareness and all that, and that's my 2 cents. 7.
That's all I got.
Well,
next time want to next time let's talk about marriage.
Yeah, talk about marriage next time. But anyway, anybody out there, I would just say quit your crime. And if you're doing good, then great.
Share it.
Share it. Comment. Say, hey, man, this is like what I focus on. What is it? But anyway, God's great, man. Peace.